On this week's Rambler Sports Locker, RSL reporter Nick Schultz recaps the major Rambler sports events from the summer.
Also, Annalise Luckenfels and her Ramble analysts discuss the NFL and we catch you up on Loyola's fall sports.
Welcome back to another season of the Rambler Sports Locker. I'm Sajid Al-Khazaleh.
And I'm Ana Maria Nunez. Although classes have been in session for 3 weeks, students, athletes, and Loyola coaches have been more than busy over the summer. To fill you in on this, here's Nick Schultz with the summer recap.
Loyola Athletics and the Missouri Valley Conference had a very busy summer. I had the highlights in this year's summer recap. Summer officially started for Loyola on May 8th, and 2 Ramblers received major honors. Men's basketball head coach Porter Moser was inducted into the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association Hall of Fame, and incoming freshman soccer player Lucas Emery was named to New Zealand's U20 FIFA World Cup team. The next day, May 9th, the MVC voted unanimously to invite Valparaiso University to replace Wichita State University in the conference. Valparaiso and Loyola were in the Horizon League together from 2007 to 2013. On May 25th, Valparaiso announced that it accepted the MVC's invitation to join the conference. The move would become official July 1st after Wichita State's membership in the American Athletic Conference officially started. Back on May 11th, Loyola softball defeated Evansville 6-1 for the 4th MVC tournament win in program history. They faced Wichita State in the semifinals and fell to the Shockers 3-1 to finish with a 27-26 overall record. Catcher Katie Kasubke earned all tournament honors after going 3 for 6 with 2 home runs and 5 RBI. In June, Loyola men's basketball hired Drew Valentine as assistant coach. Valentine was a graduate assistant under legendary Michigan State head coach Tom Izzo and is the brother of current Chicago Bulls player Denzel Valentine. On June 23rd, former Loyola men's basketball star Milton Doyle earned an NBA Summer League contract with the Brooklyn Nets. In 4 games, Doyle averaged 10.5 points per game and 5 rebounds per game while going up against NBA hopefuls like Los Angeles Lakers guard Lonzo Ball. Then in August, Doyle was back in the headlines as he was offered a training camp contract by the Nets. Once camp concludes September 30th, Doyle will find out if he made the NBA team or will be sent to the G League Long Island Nets to develop into an NBA caliber player. That's your summer recap for 2017. For the Rambler Sports Locker, I'm Nick Schultz. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Nick. After a historic 2016 season, the men's soccer team is struggling to get their offense back to where they were. The season started off on a high note when the Ramblers beat the Xavier University Musketeers 2-1. Junior Alec Lasinski scored the winning goal in overtime. On September 1st, the Ramblers lost 2-1 against MVC rival Valparaiso University. 2 days later, the Ramblers won 3-1 against LaSalle University. Loyola also competed in the NIU Adidas Invitational last week. Friday, the Ramblers lost to the University of Texas Rio Grande 1-0, but won their game Sunday against Stetson University 1-0. Wednesday night, the Ramblers played the conference foe Bradley University and suffered their 3rd loss of the season when the Braves won 1-0. The Ramblers are now 3-3 for the season, and on Tuesday, the Missouri Valley Conference honored sophomore Marius Coleman as the MVC Defensive Player of the Week. This is the 2nd time in his career he has won this honor. Coleman and the rest of the men's team will play next on Saturday at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Women's soccer also kicked off their season last month. On August 18th, they faced Oklahoma State in Stillwater, where they lost 2-0. The following Sunday, they competed against Oral Roberts University in Tulsa. Brell and Cessny each scored 2 goals to help the Ramblers win their first game of the season with a score of 6-2. The following weekend, the Ramblers hosted the Loyola Invitational, where they lost to the Drexel University Dragons 1-0, but won their second game 4-1 against the University of Akron. The women also competed at the Marquette Invitational in Milwaukee the first weekend in September. Loyola beat Mercer University 5-2, but fell to Central Michigan 2 days later when they lost 2-1 in overtime. Last Friday, they played conference team Indiana State and won 2-0. They also shut out the University of Iowa on Sunday with a score of 3-0. The women's soccer team is now 5-3 for the season. They will play Chicago State next, tomorrow night at Loyola Soccer Park.
The cross-country teams kicked off their season last Friday, September 8th, at the Illinois State Invitational. Both teams finished third overall. The women's team raced against 8 other teams and the men's 7. Alex Baker placed first overall out of all the men, and Lindsay Brewish finished runner-up for the women. The meet was won by North Central College for the men and the University of Toledo for the women. Baker and Brewish were both recognized for their achievements at the Illinois State Invitational on Tuesday when they were named male and female cross-country athletes of the week by the MVC. The women and men's team will next compete at the National Catholic Champions tomorrow at Notre Dame University.
The women's volleyball season is off to a less than ideal start. The Rambler season officially started back on August 25th at the Cal Molten Classic in Berkeley, California. Loyola lost all 3 games they competed in that weekend. The women first lost to Seattle University with a score of 3-1. The next day, they lost to host University California Berkeley, 3-1. Later that day, they lost 3-0 against the University of California, Irvine. The losing streak continued the first weekend in September when Loyola hosted Rambler Challenge of Gentile Arena, losing first to Fairfield University 3-1 and again to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee 3-0. The women did pick up their first and only win of the season so far, the last day of the challenge beating Stanford University 3-1. Last weekend, the women's team competed at the Marquette Invitational in Milwaukee, where they lost 3-0 in both matches against Marquette University and the University of Kentucky. Tuesday evening, the Ramblers continued their losing streak when they faced crosstown rival DePaul University. The Blue Demons swept the Ramblers in 3 sets.
The Ramblers will try to turn the season around this weekend at the Stacey Clark Classic in West Lafayette, Indiana. The men's golf team has been inconsistent to the start season. The men's season started on September 5th at the Crusader Collegiate hosted by Valparaiso University. They finished in 4th place out of 4 teams after 3 rounds. Despite the last place finish, junior Orion Yama tied to career 3-round low. The men competed at the Badger Invitational in Madison, Wisconsin this past Sunday through Tuesday. The Ramblers finished again in last place, this time out of 16 teams. The even was ultimately won by Texas A&M, who set an event record. The Ramblers will next compete at Madison, Illinois for Derek Dolinick Invitational in a little less than 2 weeks.
The women's golf team also started their season this past Sunday and Monday in Normal, Illinois at the Redbird Invitational. The women were in 6th place after the first day of the tournament out of 12 teams. However, they fell behind during the second day and ended in 9th place overall. In the end, the Northern Illinois University Huskies took home the victory. The women will host the Loyola Fall Invitational next Monday and Tuesday. Football fans across the country started cheering on their teams when the NFL season started last week, but some wonder if these athletes should really be celebrated.
Annalise Achenfels and her Rambo analysts discuss whether or not the NFL should hold players accountable for off-the-field actions in this week's Ramble.
Hi, I'm Annalise Achenfels. Here today with me is Patricia Martinez and Haley Spittler. For today's Ramble, we are going to be talking about if it's the NFL's responsibility to punish players for their off-field actions. Patricia, do you feel that the NFL should be punishing their players?
I think that the NFL should not be responsible for punishing their players for the off-field activity because at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the justice system to decide whether that individual athlete is guilty or not.
Haley?
I think that the NFL players should be held accountable for their actions off the field because when you join the NFL, when you get signed to a team, you also sign a standard code of conduct, and in that you are agreeing to follow their rules and not participate in prohibited things, which include like actual or threatened physical violence, stalking, illegal possession of alcohol or drugs, theft. And if you're found guilty of that, then you should be held accountable because you signed a contract that said you would not partake in that.
Right, but then there are people that are being accused of being guilty and they haven't come to a decision and they end up not being guilty, and then those individuals have to suffer because they can't play and do their job because they're being accused of being guilty. Does that make sense?
Currently, we have Ezekiel Elliott, who's on trial or appealing his decision in court. So what do you ladies think of Ezekiel Elliott being allowed to play for What do you think of Ezekiel Elliott being allowed to play in the NFL while his appeals is going through the system?
Well, I think what you were trying to get at is that you don't think it's fair for them to be taken away from their job before they're found guilty. But like with Ezekiel, he was not taken away or suspended his 6 games until he was found guilty. They have decided he is guilty, and now he is appealing that, which is why he's allowed to play again. But he didn't lose any playing time until that guilty verdict was come about.
Patricia?
Well, frankly, I agree with you and everything you're saying. However, I just think for this individual, it's a complicated situation, and I don't think it applies to every other situation. All of them are very unique in their own way. So I could, in that example, I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, ladies, final statements on if the NFL should be punishing their players or not.
I think that the NFL is the NFL, and you have the judge and the jury. And if you mix the two, it becomes a very complicated issue, and I think they shouldn't be taking away time of players because of their off-field activity if they haven't been found guilty or not yet.
Haley?
I think that the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar industry that has a really big impact and outreach on millions of fans, lots of which are children and youth who are looking up to these players, and they need to be held accountable for their actions. Not only should they want to be a good role model, but they should because that's what they agreed to do when they signed this code of conduct.
I think for today's winner for the Ramble, I'm gonna have to go with Haley, just because Haley made a really good point that they signed a contract and there's a code of conduct in the NFL that they have to uphold. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Annalise. You know, I think I'd have to agree with Haley since a lot of fans do look up to these players and they should be held accountable.
Yeah, I would also agree with Haley. For our full episodes and the chance to get in on the conversation, follow and like our social media handlers for an up-to-date look at all things Rambler Sports.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Sajid Al-Khazaleh.
And I'm Ana Maria Núñez Perez. Check back next week for another episode of the Rambler Sports Locker.
And as always, don't forget to turn out the lights.